You may not have noticed it, but something huge happened yesterday that could fundamentally change what the European Union is. Germany yesterday dropped its decade-long opposition to the idea of Eurobonds. That's this idea of the EU issuing debt or borrowing on the international markets, and then that debt being guaranteed by all 27 EU member states. That's according to a plan that came out yesterday from German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Emmanuel Macron. This is huge because Germany was fiercely resisting this 10 years ago during the financial crisis when it was suggested as a way to help the countries of Southern Europe who were struggling in the debt crisis. And what's really astonishing about this proposal is that it goes way further than what was even being discussed 10 years ago, because this would be all EU states guaranteeing the debt, not just Eurozone countries, the countries that use the euro. What's changed? Brexit. The UK, which doesn't use the euro, almost certainly would have vetoed any attempt 10 years ago to show solidarity with Southern European countries in this way. Now with the UK gone, it can go ahead. But the key ones to watch now are going to be Denmark and Sweden, who are not in the Eurozone but in the EU. And also the Netherlands, Austria, and Finland. They are in the Eurozone, and they have been very, very fiercely resisting this idea throughout this crisis, particularly the Netherlands. What's key to watch is whether Germany switching sides on this will make a difference. People in Brussels are very animated about this. They're calling this a Hamilton moment. That's after Alexander Hamilton, who the musical is about. And that refers to the period right after the Revolutionary War in the US, in which the US federal government agreed to guarantee the debt of all US states. That definitely wasn't going to be a sure thing before then, and there were lots of wealthy states that objected to it at the time. It's being seen here, this plan, as something that could equally transform the European Union. Now, there's other parts of this Franco-German plan. They also want to fundamentally transform EU competition policy. They say the EU, which has some of the strictest competition rules in the world, has been too harsh, that it's handicapping itself against global competitors like the US and China, who don't attach such stringent competition rules to their companies. Macron and Merkel want the Commission to use competition policy to create European champions. In other words, to boost European companies so they can take on global rivals. They also want to see a stepping back of globalization, and that's really astonishing to see coming from a German chancellor. But even Angela Merkel is saying now that globalization essentially may have gone too far, and that we've learned from the COVID crisis that Europe offshoring so much of its manufacturing may have been a mistake. What really crystallized this was seeing nurses and doctors having to equip themselves in trash bags, both here in Europe and in the United States. Why? Because so much of the production of that medical equipment, like so much industrial production, has left the shores of Europe and the United States and gone to other areas of the world, particularly China. There is as much concern about China here in Europe as there is in the United States, although certainly European leaders are expressing that differently. But there's now a keen drive to diversify offshoring so that the EU isn't so dependent on just China as a supplier. And politicians are saying that they really need to reshore industrial production in certain critical areas. Now, so far, the European Commission has reacted positively to this plan, at least to the debt part of it. They would, after all, the Commission, be the ones who would be borrowing on the international markets. I think their jury is still out about the competition part of this plan. But so far, the reaction from Austria and the Netherlands has not been positive. So the key thing to watch will be whether those countries follow Germany's lead in softening this opposition to Eurobonds, or, as they're being called in this crisis, Coronabonds.